So coming up in today's video, we use a multimeter. My father uses a number 5 Allen key. We look at a dirty injector, and this also happened.
Yeah,
This is Welcome everybody to another part of the VW Fox build. Now at this point in time, I honestly thought I'd be uploading the first drive, the first maiden voyage of the VW Fox. You know, finally get it out on the open road, wind through my hair, really get to experience what the 1.9 is capable of. However, things don't always go according to plan, and that's because we ran into a small issue. Now, to find out where the miss was coming from, well, we went through a list of things, and what we found was that when we actually removed the plug off the number 1 injector, well, there was no difference. And would there be no difference, it meant that it wasn't firing. So we need to change that, and in order to change that, well, we need to take the fuel rail out. In order to do so, well, you need to remove the two hoses that connect to the end of the fuel rail, one coming off the fuel filter as well as a one running into the fuel lines. So once you remove the clamps, pull those two lines off, and once you do that, you can then move on to removing the two number 5 Allen keys that hold the fuel rail into the intake manifold. Now, to remove the black plastic that consists of all of the wiring that runs through the back, that includes the wires for the injector plugs, well, you need to remove the 5 Allen keys first, and then you should be able to get that black plastic off. You need to disconnect each injector plug off the injectors so it can then be separated, and you can just pull out the fuel rail. Now, to separate the fuel rail from the intake manifold, well, we just used a long extension with a short extension attached to it and just pried it, and as you can see, the fuel rail popped out. Now, as you can also see, well, we removed and took the fuel rail out, and then afterwards we then went in and removed that black plastic that contains all of the wiring. So after a bit of jostling around of the fuel rail, well, we managed to finally get it out. So with the fuel rail out, we needed to clean the injectors, and in order to do that, well, we came up with a plan. As you can see, we managed to get a plug off an old loom that we had lying around. We cut the plug and joined two long wires. That way we can still connect it to a battery, and then I will be tapping on the battery, and that will be sending power to the injector and therefore shooting or triggering the injector. So while my father is spraying, I think it was carb cleaner, while he's spraying that, I'm going to be tapping on the battery. That's going to be triggering the injector, and this will be creating the firing motion that will allow the injector to then get cleaned. So this is what the end result look like. So from there, we then tested all of the injectors to make sure that they were firing correctly, and we also then just double check them to make sure and guarantee that they are firing correctly. And with assessing all of the injectors, it was then time to start putting the injectors back onto the fuel rail and getting it all back into what it's supposed to be looking like. So while my father is doing that, I'm gonna be installing our brand new spark plugs. So what we have is a brand new set of NGK spark plugs, because the plugs that are currently in the car are the plugs that came with said car. So they are a bit used, but they was still looking in an okayish condition, so we just put it in. But we decided, you know what, let's just put brand new plugs in and make sure, okay, you know what, it's new oil, new plugs, new oil filter, let's just complete the service. So that is exactly what we did. So now, as you can see, we are pulling out our second fuel rail. Let me explain. So what we had was a short intake as well as the one that is currently on the car, and both of them came with fuel rails. So it was our choice on which injectors we wanted to use and which fuel rail we wanted to use. So we opted for the long intake and we decided to use that fuel rail. So as you can see, what my father is just doing now is grabbing the carb cleaner, spraying it in through the fuel lines, and basically just flushing out the fuel rail. So as you can see how much carb cleaner is coming out of the fuel rail. So this is just cleaning the inside, so we know, okay, there's no buildup, no crime, no dirt, nothing. It is cleaning said fuel rail. So now from there, grab the cloth, wipe down the fuel rail, and just dried it off. So then we can now put polish on it and give the fuel rail a little bit of a sparkle, a little bit of shine, to just make it look fresh, to go along with the fresh looking engine. And to also just go along with the freshness or the newness, brand new plug wires. Yes, to just complete the set, brand new spark plugs as well as brand new plug wires to just go along with it. So after polishing the fuel rail, it was then time to now put the injectors back into place. It was then time to install the fuel rail with the injectors, and as you can see, we just took a little bit of grease, all-purpose grease, put it around the seals, and this is just gonna help it just plonk into place a lot easier and just make the whole job of putting it in place a lot easier. Now after getting the fuel rail in place, we just gave it a tight little push, had it sealed in, and then grabbed the 5 Allen keys and began to tighten it down into position. And with everything being back where it needs to be, we then started the car once more to see how it's running now. And then the car proceeded to do the same thing it did when we first started. So everything we did seemed to have changed nothing, because once my father actually pulled the number 1 injector plug off, the car made no difference. There was no change in tone in the engine, absolutely nothing. Put it back on, so we were then left with a bit of an issue. So we then grabbed the multimeter to actually just check and see, okay, are we getting power through all of the injectors. So after using the multimeter and just checking and seeing that there is current flowing through the cables, through the wires, well, we found that yes, there was power. We were getting power to each of the injector plugs. So what was the issue? So, under further investigation, we found that the car was actually sucking air through the intake manifold. So, to fix this problem, you need to get a new intake gasket, and in order to change it, you need to pull the intake off. So, yeah, we pull the intake off. Can you just explain quickly what's the story? Why?
Oh, well, what are you going to say? Um, yeah, the exhaust gaskets are sitting on the corners of the intake here. Therefore, when you're tightening, it's sitting here, over here. So when you're tightening it, it's not seating properly and it's sucking air. It's sucking air through here. So we're going to need to shave the gasket off here, because now the exhaust gaskets are sitting something like that.
Hmm. And while the gasket's actually being trimmed, let me just explain what my father was trying to show with his finger there. He was showing that the gasket actually got lifted up and that was allowing air to bypass. It wasn't giving the intake a proper seal to the head, and that was allowing some air to actually flow through and just throw the engine off and really not get it to fire properly. Now, to make sure that doesn't happen again, well, we grabbed hammer, screwdriver, and just started knocking the exhaust gasket wherever we saw that is really protruding and it's going to cause an issue for the intake gasket. Well, just knock that piece down. Make room for the now trimmed intake gasket to now be seated properly, because we do not want to be pulling off this intake once more. We now see the intake gasket is ready to go on. We see Victorine sealer has been applied to it, as well as the gasket is in place. It's attached to the head, and this means it is now good to go to be attached back onto the head and finally seal up and hopefully not come off again. So let's hope that this is the last time that we see that the intake manifold is actually taken off the car. I think I'm gonna wrap up today's video right here. So we think we sorted out the issue with the car misfiring. Now it's just the issue of the car blowing from the exhaust. Yes, as you should know, the car, we cut off the exhaust, then we tapped it back on to get us to the exhaust shop, and hopefully in the next video this car might actually be driving, but fingers crossed, and we'll just have to wait and see. And if you don't want to miss out on that, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. And lastly, I just want to say thank you so much for your support in 2023. This video should be going up on New Year's Eve, so best wishes to you and your family going into 2024. Prosperous year ahead of us. And with all this being said, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for your time. And I will see you guys in the next video.